Welcome to another Poverty Productions from GunThots.
PVS14 edition. Poverty Vision 14.
Alright, so I got my tube from Night Vision Inc. It's an L3 thin filmed white phosphor. I got it on Black Friday. It was a pretty good deal, hard to pass up.
On this helmet, also Team Wendy bump, I've got a green tube that was fairly budget tube that I got from Gear Central Supply on Instagram. I think that they have a website now that you can buy from if you wanted to. It's on a Wilcox G24 mount with a Wilcox J-arm, and you press this button and it switches sides, and you press this button and it goes back up. This is the least expensive tube here, and it works fine, honestly. It's not a huge difference between it and the other tubes other than it being green and them being white.
So I'm running a Harris thin filmed white phosphor PVS14. I also got this from Gear Central Supply. I did pay full price for it after annoying the shit out of the guy on Instagram.
So I have a white thin film tube, and he's got a green, and he's got a high spec white one. None of us experienced any adverse difficulties in all of the lighting conditions that we shot in, and that would indicate that the specs or the color was that big of a detriment to our shooting. We were all able to see the same, hit the same things, and shoot the same courses of fire. I think it's 100% personal preference. I've used a green tube and this white tube, and I think that they're almost even, and I don't think any of us really have had any issues. So under all lighting conditions, we've all been able to shoot the exact same, at least up to our own individual skill levels, with all of the different tubes that we have. So like a mid-range tube, budget, and a little bit nicer tube, all of it is not hampered, and none of it's actually been the make it or break it that vendors might lead you to believe.
Yeah, everything he said was just about right. Honestly, when you put the white tube on, it's easier to immediately start picking things out. But once you start using the green tube after a little bit, it sort of feels like your brain adjusts to the world being in different shades of green, and then at that point, it's about the same to me.
This is the rifle that I was using. It's I mean, I guess the upper doesn't really matter that much, but I've got an RMR on top of a Gwisely mount. As you can see, this is the Gwisely mount with a Reptilia. It works pretty good for passive. It's at a good height. Just about a chin weld. And then there is a little bit extra length of pull with a loft holder on this stock. Just make sure that when you do set up your guns however you want to, make sure that it works for you. Not everything that everyone says on the internet may work for you specifically. This guy over here had the same setup, didn't work for him at all. For me, works perfectly fine. Another setup I had was this with a Sig Romeo on a 193 mount. Terrible, don't do it. You can barely see through it. We were able to get hits on a silhouette at 100 yards, but it was still hard to see. Not ideal. So, you know, instead of just testing your stuff in your kitchen or in your backyard, make sure you actually try it out and shoot it, because you may be surprised what works and what doesn't work.
As far as aiming, also passive, we got EOtech EXPS3. The height is fine. If it was a little bit higher, that might be a little bit better, but it's definitely usable at this height. And light transmission through the EOtech's glass is actually really good. You can see clearly through it at night, which is a big plus compared to cheap dots like the Sig Romeo or Holosun.
So my setup is passive, just like these other guys. I'm running a Holosun 510C. I thought the setup looked great, dry firing with it in my garage, but after actually using the setup, the light transmission through the Holosun is nowhere near as good as the EOtech. I do think your setup with night vision is one thing that does make a difference. Usually I would not say that gear makes that big of a difference in your shooting, but if you have a bad setup with night vision, for instance, I was running the RMR on top of an LPVO, and with my length of pull and my long arms, that was not working for me. The scope was constantly hitting my tube. And again, the Holosun 510C is not ideal for shooting with night vision. The light transmission through the glass is not good enough to be able to see the targets through the glass. It's almost better to use the Sig Romeo, because then you can just look around the tube and guess at what you're shooting at. I mean, I shoot at noises constantly.
I would say if you want to run a red dot, you probably want to use the EOtech. Yeah. As far as handguns go, just get a dot, get a RMR or an SRO. Both of those work great. The SRO works a little bit better. The RMR is a little bit tougher.
We did not have good luck shooting through a Holosun slide mounted red dot. We did have good luck with the Trigicon RMR and SRO.
Shooting with irons under night vision
It's harder.
really bad, really hard.
One thing that you're going to find out when you start shooting under night vision is that everything is harder. Walking is really difficult, and figuring out where to place your cheek to get a good weld and then be able to see through the tube and see through your optic is very difficult.
Yeah, if you're not on a flat range, you're going to have trouble moving around if the ground is very uneven, because realistically your field of view is really small and you can't really see where you're going very well. So it takes practice to get used to that.
And definitely practice your manipulations. Things like chamber checking with your fingers and reloads, because you will bobble a lot of reloads. We cheat a lot more than we think we do.
Shut up.
No, stop.
Don't.
Stop.
If you don't want to spend thousands of dollars on a tube, and you don't want to spend $800 on a mount and a helmet and all that stuff, there is one thing that's cheaper than night vision. And what is that? A fucking flashlight. Should my gun be loaded?
Yeah. Ooh, fuck.